Hello, and welcome to the Pursuit of Prosperity. My name is Daniel Hiebert. I'm a mortgage broker in Hiebert, Alberta. I'm joined with Jacob Hiebert, a financial planner. In this episode, we interviewed Jeff Rosendaal from Rivers Electric. We discuss Christian ethics, business, how these two fit together, and what it takes to build a company like his. Stick around, it's a good one, and welcome to the show.
Well, Jeff, with Rivers Electric, how are you doing?
Good, thanks.
Yeah, good. It's
amazing.
It's good to have you here for sure. Yeah. So we've got a whole bunch of things we want to talk about: business, family, life, Christian principles in business. How old were you when you started with Rivers? Did you work there first as an electrician?
Yeah, so I started there as an apprentice.
You started as an apprentice?
So I was 23 when I started, engaged. Okay. So later than most, and later than I would suggest people do it, but that's how it went for us.
Yeah.
No regrets. There was a level of maturity that came along with it that sometimes you miss in the younger ones, but expected from them still. But
yeah, expected, but doesn't. Yeah,
it takes time.
So you were 23 years old.
Yeah.
You started as an apprentice.
Yeah,
and then you went to trade school. Got
your
cert.
Yeah. So I mean, I had my grade 12 diploma. Not that matters a whole lot per se, but
yeah.
I worked at another company for 6 months first in Picture Butte, and then they kind of got slow. I wanted to keep going. I was excited about it,
and that was electric. You were working there.
That was an electrical, as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
so a smaller company, and so Rivers. That was I had contacted Rivers the year before to see if I could work part time, but they weren't really interested in that. And a year later, when I came back after that first place for 6 months, I was able to start full time. So they were good with that.
Okay.
And that's been 26 years ago now.
26 years ago. Yeah, you went from not getting hired to apprentice to owning it. Yeah. What can we talk about that transition?
Certainly.
Maybe not now, but maybe later on. So when you started with the idea of becoming an electrician, did you have in the back of your mind that you someday wanted to have a business of your own?
No, it was never on my it was never on my radar.
Never on your radar?
No, it was not on my radar to be an electrician or a contractor or a business owner. I always thought I'd be a farmer.
Oh,
I'm a farmer at heart.
Yeah,
it remains that way. I mean, the majority of our clientele is the agricultural sector, farmers. We feel at home with them.
Yeah, so you still get to stay in contact with them.
Yeah.
Did you grow up on a farm or something?
Or? Yeah, I grew up on a farm.
Okay.
Yeah,
just here outside of Barnwell.
Yeah, locally. Yeah. We used Rivers Electric. My dad did, actually.
Okay.
So it was somewhat familiar, but.
Yeah, and then you actually ended up buying that place. That
my original plan was to get my ticket and then go on my own. Maybe just a one-man show. Yeah. Maybe have one guy, maybe my sons or something. That was my plan, and I wasn't really secretive about it. I gave my heart to my boss at the time, the owner, because I feel that's our responsibility.
Yeah.
We owe that as a minimum. We do it unto God and unto man, not unto man or ourselves first. So I felt that very strongly. So he had my heart, and I gave it everything I had. And he had no sons or anything either. A couple of years after I was working there, he asked me if I'd be interested in maybe getting involved. So that's like hanging a big carrot in front of a young guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How old were you when that happened?
About 25.
25 when he asked you that.
Okay. Like 2 years into working there. Yeah, quite early.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I remember when, and I've talked about this before, when I started my apprenticeship in carpentry in Hamilton, Ontario, one of the things my boss asked me early on was if I wanted to serve the apprenticeship and get my red seal, right? And so I said yes to that. And then he said, how do you want me to train you? Do you want me to train you as an employee? Do you want to work as an employee for the rest of your life? Or do you want to become a business owner someday? Mm-hmm. Then I can train you that way as well, but it's a different style of training in the construction world, right?
Understandably.
Yeah, right. And so
how old were you when you started?
I would have been 20 when almost 20 when I started in construction. And he posed that question when I was 22.
Okay, yeah.
And so he kind of started, and I've talked about that before. He started giving me blueprints and do the material takeoffs at home at night, and so on. But I found that for me that was, and I don't know if this was for you. And this is the reason I bring that up is because I wanted to ask you this: is you had no intention originally of becoming a business owner, at least you didn't think about it that way. When that question was posed to you, for me, it gave me. As a somebody who was born in Mexico and grew up there partially and then moved to Canada, I thought I would be an employee my entire life. Mm-hmm. When he asked me that question, I kind of went, "Do you think I'm capable?"
Oh yeah.
And he said, "Oh yeah, no, you've got what it takes. You've got a lot to learn, but you've got what it takes, right?"
Yeah.
So that he kind of, don't know how else to word it, but he kind of poured that little bit of belief, right?
Yeah.
He's like, no, you got a lot of training.
Encouragement.
Right? Was there that for you, or were you
No.
like, no, I'm ready, I got this?
No, there was none of that. It was pretty, Rivers Electric, pretty low key. There's not too much formalness about it, at least for sure not back then.
Mm-hmm.
It's a small company, so everybody knew each other well, and you had pretty close connections with your boss, so to speak, or the owner. And he treated us well. We really felt he looked after us, had our backs. So we gladly worked for him. That was not an issue, but there was none of the, let's call it grooming, for lack of better sense, none whatsoever. The school of hard knocks.
Yeah.
But so I guess the founder of Rivers Electric, same thing. He says, we didn't get here because I'm smart. We got here because I know how to work.
Mm-hmm.
And honesty, integrity, those things. But I just think he saw. I wanted to go. I wanted to get things done. I wanted to be good at it. I wanted to serve as well. I think if you're doing something you enjoy, and people need that from you, and there's value in it, it's the perfect storm.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so,
and it's
simple in one sense.
Yeah, and it's almost like that. That requires integrity to do that.
Yeah.
Right. And so if people can see that, then it's like, you know what? Yeah. Let's do something more with this person that has this know-how, that has this work ethic, and that has this drive to get something done correctly. Right.
Yeah.
No, that's cool.
But a lot of people think you're crazy for doing that, right? Because you put in way more hours than what society status quo standards would be. But I didn't see it as work, so I didn't count my hours. You're just doing what you enjoy doing. Right? Mm-hmm. This is how we do life.
Yeah.
So
really
simple, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did that transition look like then, from going to partially into it?
Yeah. So he hung the carrot in front of me, and that kind of locked me in. I never expected that, and I saw the potential in this. Well, what I really saw was this is a good place for me to work, so I can raise my family, so I can support our family, and everybody else that works there had the same opportunity to support their family, and it was. You're 25 years old. You don't know a whole lot yet, actually. Mm-hmm. It just kind of settled in the back of my mind, and we never talked about it for a couple more years. Then it would come up here or there. What do you think? Or I would see if he was still busy with the thought, and he was. But he had my heart, and then I guess in a certain sense maybe he got my soul too. I don't know. It was
your mind, will, and emotions as well.
Yeah, it was. But I gave him everything I had. And my expectation was to get my ticket, go my own, and not take any of his clientele with me, because that's his, not mine. So start fresh somewhere else. There was a cleanliness in it, I think. But so how it went, at some point, so Rivers kept growing. There was 8 people there when I started, and then it seems like every year another person gets added. And I talked to some of the other guys that had worked there for way longer than me if they'd be interested in going into it with me, and they were not. The older guys would say, "We'll be happy to work for you if you take it over," and so. But that didn't really go anywhere. Then it kind of stagnated. It was getting too big for me in my mind to do it by myself, and I thought, no, I don't know if that's for me. Yeah. So I said to him, I said, "I'm happy to work for you for as long as you have this, until you decide to do whatever you want to do." But then somebody else came along, and in time, and we partnered up in it, and that I could see through 2 people.
Okay.
So
you're still partners.
Yeah.
So you said there was 8 people. Would that included the owner at the time as well?
No, plus the owner. So there's 9, 10 people. One more or less depending on the season a bit, but on average, yeah.
Okay. How many are there now?
Oh, I would say there's probably 50 people that say they would live off of. They work at Rivers Electric. They're part of Rivers Electric.
Okay, that's awesome.
50 families that.
Yeah.
It's just been a gentle, steady, long-term growth.
Yeah. So we're in, what are we now, June?
Yeah.
How many years has it been since you and your partner took over?
So my partner, Jared Tominga, we took over 16 years ago. And this actually is the 50th year of Rivers Electric, so it's kind of a fun anniversary. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Well,
so that's kind of a milestone.
So 50 years
50 years since inception,
awesome.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
See if we can give it some more life.
Yeah.
So that's been 16 years since we took over, and there has been a lot to learn there. it does some things to you sometimes when you have to learn the hard way.
Yep.
And
I'm curious about that partnership there. So this is kind of a vague question in a sense, but a lot of people they get into partnerships like that through business, and they end up falling apart after like 5 minutes and just resenting the person for the rest of their life, right? Unfortunately, so. What does the relationship with you and Jared look like where that doesn't happen?
so we're like a husband and a wife, 100%. So when I approached him the first time about it, it was kind of a joke. But anyways, the next morning he came back and said, "Are you serious?" And I said, "Well, no, not really." But he says, "Well, should we talk about it?" And I said, "Sure, we did." So 2 years after that is when the takeover.
Can we back up for a second there? Was he an electrician with?
Yeah, he was apprenticing with us at the time.
He was apprentice at the time.
So he was one of my colleagues.
So it wasn't somebody that you brought from the outside.
No, he was from within.
And were you friends outside of Rivers?
No.
Okay.
Oh, you didn't know him outside of work?
No.
Okay. There's a
We
statement I
clicked,
read
though.
one time that said, never become business partners because you are friends.
No, that's bad.
Become friends because you are business partners.
Yeah, which we actually don't do either.
Oh, really?
No.
You don't hang out in social circles
none,
outside of
zero.
work?
Really? There's zero crossover.
So what's the thought process there?
So-
Is that deliberate?
Yeah, somewhat. More from me essentially in the beginning, but also from him. He understood quick enough. We both understood. I mean, so in our discussions, what's it going to look like and how we're going to handle this? It's a partnership, and we have our differences. We have our different thought patterns, our different backgrounds. One thing I said to him, I said, "You realize if we do this, that we're going to see each other more than our spouses. So it's like you're going to be my spouse."
Yeah.
And the biggest thing was we both have to give more than we take, all the time.
Yeah.
No matter what. So that has been the foundation of our partnership since its inception. And we always, so Jared, he's keen, very, very keen, insightful. The first couple of years, he played the devil's advocate with me all the time. Well, we did with each other, but he's way better at it than me. So we would tear apart every thought, make sure we were on the right page, that our hearts were clean in the things we were thinking. And honestly, just trying to serve the customers as best as we can.
Would you say that your priorities, you had them sorted before you got into business?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Just in terms of the business partnership, because I have people ask me this, because in the financial industry world, when I'm advising clients, one of the things I come across fairly frequently is people saying, "I'm thinking about going into a partnership." And I have several businesses that are partnerships. I have 2 that are partnerships and 1 that is not, right? And one of the things they always ask me is, should I go into a partnership? When people ask you that, what's the best answer that you can give them in less than an hour?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
If you know what I mean,
yeah,
right?
no, I do. I'm trying to see if I can somehow dice that down quick. You cannot be doing it for yourself.
Yeah.
That's number one. You got to be doing it, but both of you have to not be doing it for yourself. You have to be able to sense that in each other. That takes a certain amount of reading people. There's another word for that. You have to be able to gauge each other, but yeah, you both have to be. There's a lot of people, I think they get into it and they can show like they're going to give more than they take, but there's an edginess in there. I think if you sense that it's about themselves, then don't step into it.
Yeah.
We've all seen it often enough, and there's a little bit of revenue, and instead of paying down their debts first, they buy toys or whatever. Right? Those are the worst mistakes to make. You already start to separate your partnership in because of your desires show through in that. So you're not investing in your partnership, you're starting to invest in yourself. And that will happen down the road, but it should never start out that way, and that should be agreed upon.
Well,
we balance our time off, everything.
You bounce that off each other. So if a guy said, and I don't know that you can put numbers to it, maybe you can, but if you said you were starting a business in a partnership, and you said, in the beginning, obviously the amount of money you make is very minimal because you got to pay off the debt, you got to get going. And that is where I think that a lot of business partnerships flounder almost immediately. Yeah. And then would you say that there's a number, or is there just an agreement thing, something you have to agree to as business partners? We can't take out money out of the business until we have reached milestone X or something.
Yeah. So our agreement was we're just taking nothing out. We're just going to take our wage that we always did, period, until we think it's reasonable.
Did you guys set a time limit on that? Or did
once
you
a year.
Target?
Once a year. So every anniversary,
okay,
we sit down and go through and discuss it.
Okay.
And now over time, there's been a rhythm in things, and you've got some history together, and we don't play the devil's advocate with each other anymore. We've gotten to know each other well and trust each other explicitly. So, and then we're not going to mess with that either, of course, now anymore.
Yeah, because now it has more value.
Well, you can do way more together than you can by yourself. It's unbelievably more powerful.
Yeah.
Not in the sense of power, but in what you can get done.
Yeah, there's way more things you can achieve that way.
Yeah, and you're stronger together.
Yeah. I remember having a discussion with one of the partnerships I was in. We were having some trouble back in 2000 that would have been 2009, 10 now, maybe 2012, maybe. Anyway, and I remember phoning my old boss from Ontario who had taught me the trade in construction, and he always had a partner in commercial development. He had his construction company. His business partner was a commercial real estate appraiser. And so between the two of them, he had the construction expertise, he had the commercial real estate expertise, right? And so they would buy apartment buildings and strip malls and things like that. That was their development side of it. And I remember calling him, so we moved here in 2007, so it would have been 2010, probably 2011. And he said this to me, he said, have you achieved with that business what you set out to achieve? And I said, well, no, not really. And he said, okay, and then why don't you do that first? Set a target and go achieve that. And I thought that was very interesting. And I asked him why he was saying that. And he said this. He said, right now, I have my goal was to have 100 acres of land and have it paid for, and have an income and have assets and an income, so that I wouldn't have to worry about going to work and my kids wouldn't have to worry about going to work. That was my goal. He says, I've achieved that through our commercial real estate development. If my partner took, and we were specifically talking about somebody taking money out of the business without having agreed to it. And he said, if my partner took $100,000 here and there, it would make no difference to me, even if I knew about it. He said, because it doesn't change the lifestyle and the things that I set out to be.
Yeah.
And this guy's, he's not even a Christian. He's, I read the Bible front to back. There's nothing there, Jake, was his word to me, right? Yeah. But that was his take on it. He said, if you stress about that sort of stuff after you've reached your goals, now you're being greedy. He
That's
said
true.
To me. And I went, that's very interesting coming from somebody like that, right?
Well, I mean, the founder of Rivers Electric, so our former boss, he was not a Christian, but like I said, he had integrity. He was honest. He looked after us. That's the minimum. That's just the basis of anything. Business is actually relationships, just like our marriages, just like our families. That's actually what it is. So we had no plan in that sense, other than to just do the best we can with what we were given, and to be as responsible as we could be with it. Check our thoughts, check our actions, which also encourages us to check those around us too, to a point, right? I mean, you can't go poking people all the time, but it's we just want truth and honesty and integrity from everybody else as well. And if we're not, hold us accountable. Yeah. So that back and forth. I don't believe in the hierarchies of I'm the boss and you're really like, don't make me be the boss. I can be if you make me be the boss, but let's not go there if we can. If everybody puts their heart into it,
let's just go to work.
We're side by side. There's different responsibilities, different roles, but there's not differences in importance.
Yeah.
So those things for us are key.
Could you expand on that a little bit more? Mm-hmm. Because I know a lot of people that have worked at Rivers or do work at Rivers, and so far I've never heard anything negative. If anything, everyone loves it there. How do you cultivate that work environment?
Yeah, so it's not always that way, I'll be honest. So I'm thankful for that. We'll keep it that way. But I think as soon as it would become about me or about Jared and I, then it's going to go south.
Yeah.
But it can't be about us. So we need each other.
Yeah.
I can't do it by myself. There's a place for all of us, but in God's kingdom, there is, slave or free, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. We all have to do everything to the best of our ability, and if we do that, that's the bar. So I'm not looking at how many receptacles or how much pipe can a person run in a day, and I'm not measuring against it. I'm looking to see who is that person. Are they giving it everything they have?
Yeah, and one person's everything isn't the same as everybody else.
Totally different than somebody else's.
Yeah.
But the hard part is when people measure themselves against others, especially in condescension. Yeah. So that I struggle with, and it comes out in conversations or nuances, right? It's here and there now and again. But there must be different ways to lead. Well, there is. But I think leadership is just serving, getting underneath it all, trying to keep it up.
I think so.
Get everybody else with you doing the same thing. To me, that's what it is. I don't care if people don't know that I'm involved in the bid. When they ask me, I say, well, I work at Rivers. That's enough.
We do the work. I work at Rivers.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
So it's I'm proud of Rivers and I'm proud of our team, and that's not the point. But if we get prideful in the wrong sense, then it becomes about us, and that's always when it goes wrong. Yeah. And we all trip on it once in a while.
Yep. Pride before the fall, right? Yeah. Always.
Yeah, always. Yeah.
So, well, and I think one of the things that even in the case of a partnership, one of the things that people stumble upon always is, are we looking at at the business relationship as something that is going to serve me, or is it something that is going to serve people? Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
So for me, from the beginning, it was to serve people, and it's a good place for families for men to earn a living, or women, to live, to work, to live, right? And that's very, very valuable in my mind.
Yeah. So you grew it from you said how many employees was there when you took over?
15 to 20 when we took over.
About 15 to 20. And so you've grown it to about 50, you said now? 50
yeah,
people?
We've grown it. I wouldn't put it in those terms. I would say we're just running to keep up with the clientele. We live in an amazing area.
Yeah.
Southern Alberta. It's there. Well, I think anywhere you live, if you want to work, there's work.
Yeah.
And so what I hope our clientele sees is that we appreciate their work and we enjoy their work and we're thankful for their work, and so they're happy to call us back. I think that's another. I try to tell the people in our team too, make sure they know that you appreciate it.
Yeah. So what I meant by that question is that you've grown the ability to handle that much employees inside of your office, right?
Yeah.
So
right, physically,
like your ability to handle 20 employees when you're just into a business is different than your ability to handle those kind of that volume of people that require something from you as a leader on a regular basis, right?
You set the direction.
Yeah. And so the reason I was asking about that is, what would you say has been, what kind of a mindset shift did you have to have, or did you grow mentally, or was there anything specific, large, that you can say,
no,
this is something that I had to learn the more we grew, the more employees we had, or the more people we employed? Or?
So back in 2008, there was a huge, there was a boom or a crash.
Well, there was
kind of came close together.
2005 to 2008, and then there was that crash.
Yeah, so during that time, everybody was saying you can make anybody work at any part you want, right? If you need the people and everybody's looking for people, you can develop anything you need. And I bought into that lie. It's a fallacy.
Oh, I see.
You can't. And I learned that the hard way. So then the crash came, but things carried on. Things were stable in Southern Alberta, so that we didn't even really notice it. But it was just bit by bit. I can't keep up. What do we do? We can't keep up. What do we do? So then almost all of our growth, especially in leadership within, has been from within.
Okay.
People that have been with us a long time, that we know, that we trust, and they're the ones we would approach and say, "Are you interested in
more responsibility?
Looking into it more?" Yeah.
Taking on more responsibility.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So the mistake you made then in 2008, that was more so like a fake expansion almost, when it wasn't needed yet?
Well, no, it was not that. It was just, I was more keen to hire from outside. Let's advertise, let's find somebody, let's plug them in. But it's not widgets, it's not things, it's people, and it's emotions, and it's character, and it's all these different things, and you can't just...
So word of mouth hiring really worked better.
Yeah, so the majority of our hiring is word of mouth.
Yeah. What percentage would you say? Like
90, 95%.
95 up there, right? That's awesome.
Walk-ins and word of mouth. Yeah, we've advertised a few times. We're just looking for, if somebody's sitting at home for 2 months waiting for their next job to open up, and they're electricians and it works and it fits, so why not bring them on board for a while? So we've done that approach a couple times.
Okay.
And sometimes we've kept some people through that too. Okay. It takes a long time to develop from the ground up. Yeah. But it's usually then you know each other best.
Yeah, I think that hiring, like I remember when I started in construction, like I came off the farm as a laborer, right? Mm-hmm. As a seasonal laborer to begin with. We did, a bunch of different roles on the different farmers, right? But one of the things I asked my boss about at the time when I got started there was, I said, I have no experience in construction. Mm-hmm. And he said, but you've worked on farms your whole life, right? And I said, Yeah. And he says, so you'll probably have some common sense that we can use in construction. You know, and I kind of went, that actually worked because, you know, 4 years into the job, I had my apprenticeship done, and I was foreman at the time, right? I was his highest employee that he had at the time, right? If he wasn't on site, I was the boss, right? Which for me was fairly difficult at the time, but it was the common sense he was looking at. He said, I can train you the way that I need you trained, and we can get to know each other, right? And so I can see what that means.
So it's personal responsibility, right? That's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, if people have that, then they can learn anything they need to or want to. They just have to understand. You can't teach common sense in a certain sense, but that personal accountability, personal responsibility, and don't be too scared to fail, right? Like, don't do dumb things time after time after time. Learn from them, but I mean, that's how common sense develops.
Yeah.
It's how it works.
Yeah.
So, the earlier you were saying that one former boss or business partner, he had 100 acres and he had all the things he wanted, and he didn't want to have to work himself, and he didn't want his kids to have to work. I think one of the boons of our society now is parents saying, I want my kids to have a better life than I did.
Yeah.
I think that's pathetic.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the most selfish statement I've heard, if you think it through.
Yeah. Well, and he still worked, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when I went to go see him after we had moved here in 2007, and I went back to go see him in 2013, and he had made that statement in 2010 or whenever it was. So when I showed up to go see him in his yard, he showed up. I was there waiting for him. When he showed up, he pulled up in his work van with muddy boots and dirty coveralls, and actually it was ABS glue all over his hands.
Yeah.
I said,
That's
"Hey,
good.
what are you doing?" And he said, "Oh, I was just helping the plumber out."
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And I said, "So what about tomorrow?" "Oh, tomorrow's somebody else is going to be on site, so I'm going to be working with him tomorrow." Right. So I believe to this day he'd be working with his hands.
Yeah.
Because he loved it.
And that makes sense.
So his statement was not that I don't want to work. His statement was that I don't have to.
Yeah.
Right.
And
so
fair enough. Yeah.
Right. And so that to me, even
there's wisdom in that.
There's a law. Yeah. Right. And so I kind of think about what you said. I think is very true. Yeah. To raise kids that don't want to work is.
Yeah. They don't have to work.
Yeah.
I think it's good for them to feel some heat.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
We felt it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it was good for us, I think.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why is that a selfish statement to?
Because a lot of times it gives them the reason to work as much as they want, to make as much money as they want, to get the things they want.
That's true. It's all about them.
That's mostly when I look at some of it, and not all of them. I mean, it's a fairly broad blanket general statement, but there's a lot of pride in everything we do.
Mm-hmm.
And, did they have such a bad life? No, I don't think so. And their kids, they get disconnected from their parents because their parents are so busy making it look like it's for them.
Yeah.
But what are they going to do with it all?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So that's how I see that. That's it can even be well meant to a point, but it's
well, if I think about my parents, so like I said, and I've often made the joke that when I was a kid growing up in Mexico, we were like really, really poor. The definition of dirt poor was us. Yeah. We were really poor. That my parents sought to come to Canada and seek a better life for their kids was a very different statement than if I made that statement today.
100%.
Right?
100%.
So I think that for them, like it was a very different thing for them to say, I want my kids to have a better life than it would be for somebody who's living in Western society today that's got a full-time job and has paid for,
Then it was just, you didn't want to see your children starve. That hurts. That's painful. But materialism creeps in so easily and so quickly, right? So that it's just something to be on guard for, I guess, for ourselves. But
oh, for sure. And my parents, like, legitly, there was times we didn't eat because there was no food. Yeah. Right?
See, I can't imagine.
Yeah. So for them to say something like, I want better for my kids, is a very different statement than if I make that statement.
The context is,
Like most parents, when they make that statement today, they mean larger house, nicer cars, less work hours, less purpose, right? Yeah.
Less purpose. Well, yeah. And so I think that, can we talk about family for a few minutes?
Certainly.
Okay, let's shift gears for a minute. So you were 25 when you were approached about the business opportunity? How long from the time, and I'll mention the family in a second, from 25 till how old were you when you actually took over?
10 years.
10
till 35 when.
Oh, so that was a 10-year process between the first
Well,
conversation.
it was 12 years from when I started working at Rivers to when we took over.
Okay, what did you're obviously married, you had kids. What did your family look like? How many kids did you have right?
6.
Can I ask you about that?
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
So when we took over,
Yeah.
I think 5 or 6.
Yeah,
I don't know exactly. I
5
can't
or
keep
6.
track of that. We have lots.
Yeah, because you have 9, right?
We have 9
You have
children.
9 children. Yeah, that's awesome. I think
13 now, 14.
yeah, because you got to count the in-laws and the grandchildren.
Yeah, so it's amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So yeah, there was 5 or 6 then. Yeah.
What for somebody who's getting started in business and is wondering about family and business life balance, what can you tell them?
You're going to have to work a lot, which is fine, I think. But your family can still be first, because you're spending a lot of your time at work. Doesn't mean your family's second. So you have the opportunity to go home for supper still, especially when your children are younger. Spend some time with them and go back to the office later. Or nowadays, log in.
Yeah.
A lot of times, your people aren't at the office or the shop anymore, so it's more admin tasks, quoting, things like that. You don't have to stay at the office till 8 o'clock. You can go home, and I always appreciate the break. I appreciated seeing my wife and my kids, and sometimes I didn't feel like going back, so then I would get up earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about it, so a lot of people spend their free time also not doing things with their spouse or their children, and that's not wrong. Let's call it recreation,
Yeah.
whatever, or relaxing. But work can be just as much that as other things.
Well, yeah, and that's actually one of the things that I think about a lot. Is somebody said to me, so we have a lot of long haul truck drivers in the area, right? And that's an industry that's obviously very necessary.
Yeah.
But one person said to me, he was a long haul truck driver, so he'd leave on Sunday late afternoon or Sunday night, and he'd be home Friday morning to Friday afternoon. That was kind of his average at the time. And he said, but when I'm home, I make it a point to leave work and be at home. Yep. He says, I spend more time with my wife and kids than the average employee that gets off of work at 6:30, comes home and sits on his phone until 10 o'clock, or watches TV until 10 o'clock, and then tucks the kids to bed. Right?
100%.
So it's purpose, right? Or what are you doing with the time that you have? Right? And
so when my children got old enough, and I mean sometimes when they're 4, 5, 6 years old, they can start helping on a lot of tasks, or especially at home, because there's work to do at home too, not just at work. And I would include them in that. I never thought that it's my job to entertain my children, to be busy to keep them entertained. So I would just include them in my life. So why don't you help me build a fence? Why don't you help me mow the lawn? Let's do this together. Let's do that together. And so as they get older, it's nice because if there's nothing to talk about, it's not awkward.
Yeah.
And if something's on their mind, it can come up somewhere.
Yeah.
And so what if you work till 11 o'clock on the fence on a beautiful spring night?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So those are memorable things at the same time. And so you have purpose and you're accomplishing things.
Yeah.
And you're building the relationships. And it's not about making money or anything at that point, right? It's just time together.
Yeah. Because I remember, and I've said this to a few people now when they ask me about advice and like business advice when they're starting a business or whatever, or they're going into partnerships or anything like that. One of the things that I tell people is when you get off work, be at home until the kids are going to bed. And if you have to work in the evening, do it after they go to bed.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's wise.
Yeah. So I did a lot of that. I would bring home blueprints and do all my estimates, all my billing. That would happen between 10 and midnight or between 5 and 6 in the morning. And then at 6 o'clock, I'd be off to the job site. Right.
Yeah. With bells on your toes.
Yeah.
Right? And a smile on your face.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That you're going, things are getting done. And there's nothing more stressful than you're not ready for the other people in the morning.
Yeah.
And they're standing there looking at you. Now you're wasting their time. So that little bit of extra effort at night. And you don't do that for the rest of your life. That's
just for a period of time.
It could be for a few years or a number of years.
But when especially when starting a business, and that's kind of what we wanted to talk about, is the family and business startups.
Yeah.
To be able to balance that time with focus, not just the time goes by and where did it go? You have to be able to say, okay, from 6 o'clock, we're going to do this till about 9, and then the kids are going to go to bed. Then I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that for 2 days a week.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to be very disciplined.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have to be very disciplined, but you have to be disciplined enough.
Yeah.
And then there's different seasons that changes what you need to do sometimes. So, if it's wintertime and it's quieter, in the beginning you tend to get nervous because what are we going to do tomorrow? Right?
Yeah.
So, but over time that balances out. And then the other part of it is my wife. I couldn't have done it without my wife.
Yeah.
And sometimes she thought I loved my work more than her.
Yeah.
She realized now it was never the case, but it's also a sense of duty and a sense of responsibility in the fathers and the husbands. And because it's not about being a business owner, it's just about making sure I fulfill my responsibilities that I told people I would do.
Yeah.
In what way would you say you couldn't do it without her?
So she made sure the home ticked, and I came home to a warm, kind, loving place. And my kids were always excited to see me when I came home, no matter what time or how little, because my wife was happy to see me. If she would have said, "Oh, there's that guy again," pretty soon my kids would not be running to the door.
Yeah.
Right? So then there were times when she started to understand, okay, this is just what it takes. And so she'd phone me and say, "Jeff, I'm going to order pizza, and let's just meet at the park, and then you can go back to work after that." To me, that meant she understood what I was going through. We were doing it together.
Yeah.
That was not me just trying to do it my way, and she just has to suffer through it. It was then I felt like we were carrying it together, and I still got to see my children. Because what are you doing it for?
Yeah.
Right? It's no use doing it all for yourself. That's pointless.
Well,
So those things I fondly remember.
Yeah. Well, and I think also that there's also no sense in doing it by yourself.
No, none.
Right. No. Like that's one of the things that I think about a lot is what is the point of accomplishing anything if you have to accomplish it by yourself? Yeah. And for yourself, it's like really, then what? Right.
Well, and ultimately, I was not really too concerned about what other people thought about me, unless I was failing them. I didn't want to hear that, of course. But I wasn't looking for their accolades, but I did want my wife to appreciate me. And my children to appreciate me.
And that's a noble. What do you call that? That's a noble desire. I think that's what maybe the right word
in a proper sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, pursuit.
Noble pursuit. Yeah, that's a good word. Yeah. Right, that just means that you're wanting to do the best that you can. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, you're saying you're not doing it for yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And you said that your boss wanted 100 acres of land and not having work and whatnot. When the company was just growing, and you probably had some sort of vision for it, I'd imagine, did you have any goals in that regard that would sound similar to that? Or what was your mindset?
Our mindset was very, very simple. Pay down our dets. That was it.
As in the company debts or personal debts?
Company debts. Yeah. So personal has always been kept separate between my partner and I. So we had to maintain our personal lives the way we had them anyways, which is a good exercise. And then you become disciplined and your patterns become proper. Mm-hmm. Right? You're not thinking about what I'm going to do because you're not going to do what you're going to do.
Because the income is just
and
the same as
if it was there, that's company income. That's not mine. So I think in a certain sense for my partner and I, the partnership was healthy in that we couldn't make it about ourselves. Well, we could, but that wouldn't have worked. To keep it working, it couldn't be about us. So that was rivers. Yeah. And then at the end of the year, we'll see where we're at. We'll see how we did. And we just every day just do the best we can. Yeah. Just every day the best we can.
So in terms of income, I'm not going to ask you how much you were making, obviously. But so what you did is, and I've often thought this through, is you set an amount what you were going to pay yourself and the amount that your partner was going to pay yourself or each other, I guess, as personal incomes. Yeah. You lived off of that, and there was no you gave each other and yourselves no opportunity to just withdraw.
No,
or
zero.
It just wasn't happening. That wasn't a conversation.
Still not there.
At the end of the year, we're going to look at this, and then we're going to see how much debt can we pay down. Yeah. Can we afford to hire another employee? Can we add this? Can we do that? Yeah. Those were the conversations you were having, not how much can I take out at the end of the year. No. Yeah, and I think that one of the things I always tell people when they ask me about business partnership advice, there's probably a lot more to it, and it's a 3 or 4 hour conversation usually, but I say know what your roles are.
Yep.
Don't cross them.
No, you're right.
Number 2, I say know how much it's going to cost you to get in.
Yeah.
Yes. Know what you're putting onto the table, how much money are you putting on the table, and time.
Yep. What's
going to cost you, time and money. And number 3 is know how much you're getting back and when. You must know that up, or at least have a plan up front.
Yeah, so that part's hard to define because you can't control too much. You
That's
can't
right.
control the economy. You can't control tariffs or whatever. Right? There's so much that's not in our hands. So, it's so definitely the first two. You have to know what you're putting into, know what you're getting into, and be open about that together. And then just keep a very simple goal of, hopefully,
Yeah.
we should be able to make it work how
Or
we've
let's
been
work
doing
towards,
it.
right?
And exactly.
Yeah.
So, but it was just agreed upon. You didn't even think about. I mean, you would check to make sure you were not going backwards, but that was the only reason you were looking at the numbers. Otherwise, you just every day and just try to make every moment profitable.
Yeah.
And just not like filthy lucre. That's not healthy, right? Then I mean, if you can make 300%. And it's not filthy, but a lot of times we become greedy and we start to get more and whatever. So, but profit is good. So we try to make every moment profitable.
Yeah. And that includes your own time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Right. And so the third one, I always look at it, and this is actually one of the things I wanted to get your opinion on is you can't really set a number on it because like you said, there's so many uncontrollable things, but you can say, I will take this much of a wage and you will take this much of a wage as long as the business allows that.
Yeah.
And then we're going to see at the end of the year and then we're going to talk about it at every anniversary or something like some sort of structure that you can say, no, this year we're not talking about it until June 15th of 2023 or whatever. Right. Because I know one of the things that one of the partnerships that I'm in right now is we made a 5-year commitment. Nobody talks about money, about taking money out of the business for the first 5 years. So we kind of
essentially what we had too.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that was almost. It was said. It was kind of unspoken, but I think now at this point, if I was doing it again, learning what we've learned, I would just lay that down.
Yeah. Yeah. We actually put it on paper.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't talk about money out for the first. This is how much in. This is our roles. This is our responsibilities. We're not talking about money for 5 years.
Yeah.
When I first mentioned that to some other people, not in our business, those guys are good guys with good integrity. Thank the Lord for that.
Yeah.
But when I mentioned it to another person, I said, you need to get into that business relationship with that guy and not talk about taking any money out for 5 years. I've had a few people kind of go, okay, I can maybe do that. One person said, yeah, there's no way I'm doing that.
Yeah, well, then I wouldn't want to partner with that
Right?
person.
I'm like, but your partner needs to know that, or your potential partner.
I was listening to this interview with one of the Shark Tank investors.
Okay,
I think it might have been Mark Cuban.
Yeah.
But anyways, he was saying that sometimes they'll fund, an investment right into a company, and as soon as the wire hits that company's account, they'll see on the guy's Instagram or whatever that he's out on a lake somewhere on a boat, right?
Yeah.
Going to all these things that the only reason he can afford it is because of the new investment money, right? And he said as soon as they see that, like your first instinct with my money is to just go and take a little bit of a break. He said, my first instinct is to get out of that company as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Because it means even if you're going to build a good business, you're in it for the sake of the money and the luxury, not for the sake of the love of the product.
Yeah.
Which is definitely something I can see in both of you guys. It's like for you, it's like you just genuinely love like investments and money. And you don't love money, but you love figuring out ways to figure out people's financial lives, right? And giving them some hope in it. And for you, it sounds like you just really love the electrical work that you do. You're like so focused on high quality for all your customers, and you just love giving them that value.
Best service, yeah.
And it seems like that's what builds the long-standing businesses, but also in the end, the most profitable as well.
Oh, I think so.
I think so. Well, the way I look at it is like I have a client, and he's probably not going to hear this, and I won't say his name, but I started with him about 5 years ago. And they had been referred to me. So they came into the office and talked to me a little bit about, maybe you can help us with some money. And they were living in a small house in town with a substantial mortgage on it. And he says, I'm going to be in debt for my entire life. I know that I'll never retire with anything. And he had a bit of a defeatist attitude with him about that. And you get that with some people, right? But anyway, long story short, 3 weeks ago now, that same family had, and obviously the investments we had put them in had done well over the last 5 years because it's been an incredible market. And so they started, and I convinced them to pay off their personal debts. So I had some credit card debt. I said, get rid of your personal debt, leave your mortgage, take 10% of your income and start investing it. Yeah. We'll use it properly. We'll start investing it. So we started doing that. And 5 years later, they take out the $100,000 that they now have with me, and they are selling their house and they're buying an acreage with half of it paid for with cash.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I kind of go,
that's astounding.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that brings value.
Yep.
Right. So that's how I look at it is in the investment world, what can I do that will make their life way better?
And not once during that story did you talk about your commission on that.
Well, when they took their $100,000 out, my commission dropped, right?
Yeah. But point being, though, the reason you love that story so much is because you saw the value that you added to them, not the value that you're extracting from them.
Yeah, I'd have to actually really think that through how much my commission would have been over those years. I don't even know, actually.
Right, well.
Right, I don't actually even know that.
No, because that's not what you're busy with.
That's not what you're busy with, yeah. No, and I've actually had it a few times few people that are in the investment world where I am, they ask me that fairly regularly. And this is what you talked about earlier, is it comes in little nuances and little conversations is, well, what's your commission? And I go, I don't know. I'll have to check. Well, I'll have to check what last month's was. And yes, you should know your business numbers. But if that is the only, and I look at it this way, and this is what I wanted your opinion on as well. If your commission is more important than the other person's success, then you probably have a problem.
Yep.
Right.
I concur.
Right. So that's kind of how I look at it is if you bring value, commission will come,
100%.
Employment will come, profit will come. Right.
Yeah, well, then you're part of the solution and not part of the problem.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, when you provide value to a customer, do you focus on speed, price, or quality?
You can never have all three, right?
Right.
But we try to do all three.
Yeah.
So we try to be efficient. So the balancing act comes in your labor rate and in what you think you can charge as a fee for your services. And so there are some people that for some tasks you could get way more because of their productivity, but on the other hand, there's other ones where you're going to get. So you find an average, and so our rate we find is a nice average. It's industry standard, but there are minimums that you have to hit productivity wise. But the biggest thing is I want them to look the customers in the eye. I want them to connect with the people.
Yeah.
And not everybody wants to do that or can do that, but that's I think that's the most beautiful part of it. And then quality, but yeah, they can be relative. And we have some customers, and they said, just do a good job, okay? So you do a good job, and then they beak about the bill. And they're like, yeah, but I didn't mean you didn't have to go overboard. I'm like, well, for the next person, that was like, is that all you're going to give me for that? Like, you could have spent another 2 hours and done it a bit nicer, no? So you have to really get to know your clientele, and that doesn't have to take long. But some people, I think that's the first thing. Just get to know who you're working for.
Well, yeah, and I was going to say, if you have that conversation up front, and I often actually think about, my dad got a paint job on a pickup truck. And it was I won't describe it too much, lack of time. But anyway, he went to a body shop, and how much is it going to cost me to paint it? And the owner of the shop, and this was in 2000, this was been 97, 98, 97. Anyway, he says, I can do it for $800. I can do it for $2,000, or I can do it for, I think it was $4,000 was his other option. Yeah. And my dad said, you can do it for $800? And he said, yeah, it'll be the poorest quality, but I can give you these three options. Yeah. And so he was having that conversation openly with my dad that based on what you want, I can give you what you want. Yeah. I thought that's phenomenal.
Key. It is.
Right?
It's an amazing thing.
Right. And so my dad said, well, I want the $800 one, right? And we got the pickup back, and it had some paint runs and clear coat runs, and my dad didn't care. It was a work truck. But he got an $800
tickled pink.
Yeah, right. Yeah. He was happy. The truck ended up going to Mexico. But I think those kind of upfront conversations are, and that's why I do financial needs analysis for people, right? Like, what does it actually look like? What are we dealing with here? And some people, they're just like, well, no, I have some money. I want to invest it and let you deal with it. Yeah. But for a lot of family situations like the one I described earlier, you want to run a pretty in-depth analysis and say, okay, what are we actually doing here? What are we doing it for, right? And so he was doing that with my dad in about 30 seconds.
Yeah. No, and in a roundabout way, I think that's where the connection lies, right? That just working for somebody, they'll pay their bill, but when when they feel you've understood them and you gave them what they wanted, whether it was $800 or $4,000, they're always happy to pay.
Yeah.
So happy to pay.
Yeah.
Because they thought, well, they feel like they're looked after.
Yeah.
And they got their value. So,
Yeah. So for you right now, and with you being in the office more at Rivers, how do you I want to say the word delegate, though I don't know that that's the right word. How do you get your guys to go out and have that conversation with clients up front? Is that something that you actually think about, or is that
you do? And sometimes it's just as simple as make sure you call them when you're on your way. But a lot of it too is we don't have, thankfully, too much turnover in our team.
Oh, I see.
So
yeah.
they know each other. They've gotten to know each other.
Yeah.
And they'll ask for the same people back if possible, or I'll say, oh, sorry, he can't make it, but we'll send somebody else. So it's part of being professional at the same time.
Yeah.
So and even just the courtesy of a thank you. When you're done, just say thanks. Let them know you're finished.
Yeah. So what about internally? Like, do you have that discussion with your employees before they go out?
More with
something you just talk about
with the
generally?
leadership. Yeah. So I mean, when we started, when I was working for Roy, who started Rivers. I was having those things with my colleagues, and I realized that the people enjoyed it, like the customers enjoyed it, and it gave me more pleasure in my work.
Yeah,
just to have those connections, build those relationships, and if they thought you could wire their house, they thought you could do anything because that's their personal space. And if they got you into wire a shop, that was their farm shop, and they didn't really connect with you, then you're just another guy. But in their homes is where you could really connect.
Yeah.
But so then, as you take over in those kinds of things, you're having those conversations quite directly because there's only 15 of us.
Yeah. Oh, at the time, yeah.
Yeah, but now our leaders, our foremen, whatever you want to call them, are leaders.
Yeah.
They're like us in that sense.
So what percentage, and I don't know if we can really quantify it, but what percentage of those 50 people that work at Rivers would you say are in a leadership position? Like what's your leadership, or in the field, so to speak? What percentage?
So we mostly go out in 2-man teams, so at least 50% of our group has to be leaders, whether they're experienced or not.
Yeah, that's
a
hard
know what
bar.
I mean?
Yeah.
That's how it goes. We pretty much just go out in 2-man teams.
Yeah. What's your office to field staff ratio?
Yeah, it's about 1 to 5.
1 to 5.
Let me see. We've got 8 to 50, 8 to 40. So yeah, something like that.
8 to 40. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. We never thought it'd get that high, but it's what it needs.
Yeah. What would you say is, I'm not sure how to word that. What would you say is one of the biggest dangers in a business that size?
Yeah, losing connection with your people.
Yeah.
That's the part that I fear the most, because you don't hardly. So we take hiring very seriously, and when we take on new people, Jared and I do the interviewing.
Oh, you haven't delegated that. You still do it all yourself. Yeah. That's awesome.
And I find there's more outfits that actually seem to do that. But that's the only time I get to see who they are, and they get to see who we are.
Yeah.
Because after that, you hardly see them until they come along further in the ranks.
Yeah.
And then you start dealing with them more directly. But even then, we have our foreman in between, our project managers in between. They're usually handling a lot of that now.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I'm not sure what I do, but I'm always busy and I'm never finished.
And you're not done.
Basically making sure everybody has what they need.
Yeah.
But people need to feel valued. They need to feel seen. Right? They want you to know that they're trying to do a good job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you have to acknowledge that once in a while. So we go out to the jobs. We touch base here and there. Not as much as we would like, but
yeah. Would you say that? One of the big risks that companies that have that many people lies with whether or not the employees feel valued?
I think so.
You think is that like if you had a group of things at the top, where would that fall? Like within the top 5 or within the top 10?
I think respected is a big one at the top, that they feel respected.
Yeah.
Money is the 3rd or 4th statistically. We all kind of know.
Interestingly, yeah.
For some people, it's money. It's all about give me the hours and how much can I get per hour. But it doesn't usually.
But the percentage of people where that's at the top is very small.
That's very small.
Yeah.
I think most just want to be recognized, respected. I'm here, I'm doing good. So I think even just a good morning.
Yep.
Just and knowing their names.
Yeah. Well,
that's a struggle.
When you got
that we have that. We know their names, but
And their birthdays and their anniversaries. Oh, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, and their wives' birthdays.
Yeah.
It's. I think that's the biggest thing, just to look in the eye and just the feeling that you have each other's backs.
Yeah.
That's and you can kind of lay that down in an interview process too, or I guess you call it an interview process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How many times do you interview people before you hire them on average?
Just once.
Just once. And
they might have been in a time or two, right? It's your first impression is huge.
Yeah.
Some people walk in and like that just would never work here, and I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But that's my first impression.
Yeah.
Other ones I thought, oh, this is going to be a good fit, and I was wrong.
Yeah.
But there's risk. That's why I find hiring a big deal, because it's risky. You don't know who you're putting in the team.
Well, and you have to. You're the one that gets to gauge whether or not they're going to fit with the rest of the team.
Yeah, and I've seen people change.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
I've seen that it's not who I thought this was.
Yeah.
We've all tasted that too. So there's risk in it, but you have to keep taking risks. You can't sit idly by.
Yeah. Well, and I've made this comment a few times about marriage. It's like, you marry one person, and if you think you'll be married to the same person 10 years from now, you've got another thing coming.
Yeah, no, that's true enough.
But so
never thought of that. Yeah, no, it's the same for the other side.
Exactly the same.
I think that's why it can last, because you actually never, especially men, when we figure something out, we're done with it and we're on to the next thing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So I still haven't figured out my wife.
Well, and you know what? That's why God created them that way, right? If we figured them out, it'd be like,
no, that's the thing. It would not be healthy.
Yeah. Are there any explicitly Christian values that carry over into business very well?
Yeah, all of it. How do you want to word it? So integrity is biblical. Honesty is biblical. Trustworthiness is biblical.
Thou shalt not steal is also biblical.
And not coveting is biblical. And don't lie. So, I mean, to me, it's just a purely biblical. So, but we're not, anybody can come work at Rivers Electric as long as you're going to not steal and all those kinds of things, which everybody kind of understands. Yeah. But we do say we do our best to run Rivers from a biblical perspective, which also means you've got to hold us accountable. Mm-hmm. It's not just this way, it's both ways. And so we want people to know that about us, whether they like it or not. But I think we need that. It's like the lines on the highway. To me, that's a symbol of the Ten Commandments. Mm-hmm. Take those lines off the highway, it's utter chaos. Yeah. So I want those lines kept there. I want them darker, I want them thicker, because it protects us from each other. But it gives us comfortable places to work within where we know what the expectations are. Yeah. And they're healthy expectations that are meant for our good. Yeah. So that's, you can call it biblical. To me, there's no other reason to have those things other than a God who created us. Yeah. And we owe it to him. And we should be thankful for these things.
Oh, absolutely.
For our work, we should be thankful. It's a gift.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I always think about is, in business, as in and you referenced it to a marriage earlier. Mm-hmm. In business, if you're afraid of accountability, then you probably shouldn't be in business. Well, is that an accurate?
And you probably shouldn't get married.
Yeah,
you shouldn't have children.
Yeah. You should certainly not have children if you're afraid of accountability.
I mean, some of us need to learn it. There's depths of these different things, degrees of these different things, right? As you learn. Yeah. As you get run through the ringer, and it happens. Yeah. But then you also understand the cleaner you keep your nose and the more accountable you stay, the simpler it is. Yeah. You don't have to remember anything because you're not hiding anything.
Yeah. Yeah, somebody actually said that to me once. Remember that day you said this and this? I'm like, I have no idea. I was like, you don't remember that? I said, nope. If you're telling the truth, you don't have to remember.
No. Yeah. No. And so it's, there's we all need to be on our guard. We're but men.
Yeah,
so
we are but
men.
Men.
I think that's also the beauty of working with other people. It's, I don't know, I can be by myself. I have no issue. I can work on my own. I can be on my own. I'm content on my own. But there's a beauty in having people around you, people to work with, people to talk to, people to contend with.
Well, I think we're
sharpen on.
Yeah, we are created to be that way. Like if 100%. You think about how, and maybe this is way off topic, and maybe it has nothing to do with it. But if you think about if God said we are created in His image. Mm-hmm. He didn't create us in His image just so that we would be by ourselves. No. He created us in His image so that we would be with Him. Yep. And if that is His image, then it is also reasonable to expect Him to have created us to be with other people and get along and build relationships and build businesses and build families and build churches and everything else, right? Like that's not an unreasonable extrapolation one from the other.
100%.
Right? Yeah.
And then the biggest thing is grace received, right? Because then it comes from the proper heart posture.
Yeah.
And still there's struggles, but to do it for somebody else's sake and for God's name, not my own, that's the key.
Yeah.
Then whatever, you can work for hundreds of years and never get tired of it.
Yep. Well, we'll be doing that when we get to eternity, right? When we get to in heaven, you'll be doing something for eternity.
I believe so.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's, I think all of the original question was how does that work into business? I think that's whether your business is working for one man or whether your business is working for yourself or whether you're I don't like the term employee. I find that's you have obviously your employees and your employers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I find in this day and age, employees sounds like it's somebody that the employers are trying to get something off their backs.
Yeah.
And I think if everybody does their part, as long as I'm looking after the part that I was given, took after, whether it was by my boss or by my partner, we're always answering to somebody.
Yeah.
If just do that to the best of your ability.
Yeah. Well, and I think that very often the idea of becoming a business owner or employer, people think that somehow they're going to be able to work for themselves.
Yeah.
I think that's just not true.
No, that should not enter your mind.
Yeah.
No. If you want to work for yourself, you just have to be a sole proprietor with no people.
Yeah, exactly. Or even then you're working for your customers.
You're still working for your customer.
Right. So I think that's in the beginning, I heard that a few times and I went, oh yeah, that actually makes sense. But when somebody said to me this, and I can't remember who it was, I wish I remembered who it was, but it changed my mind it really opened my mind about a lot of things, is he said, Jake, you don't want to work for yourself. You don't want to work for yourself. You want to work for somebody else. Mm-hmm. But what you want to do is you want to build something for your kids. That's what you actually want. And I kind of went, really? And he goes, well, let's talk about that a little bit. And so we had it was a long conversation. It would have been probably a 2 or 3 hour conversation. He goes, you have your concept of working for yourself is just not true the way you're thinking about it. That's for you, that's not true. You say those words, but that's not what you want. And I kind of sat there for a minute and just let that sink in. He's like, what you want is to work with people and build something. Yep. That's what you actually want. And I went,
yep.
Okay. Is it fair to say that instead of working for yourself, it's working for your vision?
Maybe there's a vision that you're trying to achieve. Maybe that's possible.
Like the thing that you want to build, and you're doing it with people, but it's executing what you want to see.
Yeah, and for people. Right. So would you say that that's like?
Yeah, I concur, but I still don't actually know what I'm doing it for. Other than this is what I was given to do every day, so I do it to the best of my ability, and the rest I leave in God's hands. I have no idea. Like I said, I never meant to be an electrical contractor, or that's all in His plan.
You were going to be a farmer.
Yeah.
Do you ever think? How old are you now?
Almost 50, 49. Yeah.
Do you ever think that it's not something that you wanted to start out doing? Do you think it's what you will end up doing, or is there a different avenue that you want to eventually take?
I have a heart for fathers and for men, but I can't. I need to do something with my hands to stay sane. So I'm dealing with people all day long, and I enjoy it. But there's a pressure because there's expectation, right? Can you do this for us? Can you? And she tried to make it all fit. So there are other things that I would like to get into down the road, but I've also kind of left that in God's hands because I don't want to get some preconceived notion of when I want to be done or starting or finished. Or I know one thing: I don't want to do this again. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of time, and there's another generation coming up. They can take it on, whoever that's. But I don't want to squander the things I've learned either. And maybe nobody needs to hear anything from me, but I mean, there's a lot of even men my age. We need to talk together. We need to.
Well, and I think that what you mentioned. Let's see if I can reword that. How you said that there's a lot of things you would want to. There's some things you'd want to do. And then you talked about men in relationship to leadership a little bit. Yeah, well, and so you have some sort of an idea of how you want to pass leadership skills on to other people.
Yeah, but not so much for electrical contracting.
Yeah,
just for life, right?
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Yeah,
like own your families.
Yeah,
like your children, your daughters, your sons. Own your job or your work. I don't want to call it a job. Own your work, whether you're an employee or just own it. Just do it for somebody else's benefit, not for your own. Bless others. Just get yourself out of the way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, and that's it. I wonder sometimes if, and like, you could almost do a couple of hour conversation just on what the biblical man is.
Oh, 100%.
Right. Or probably
Do
a couple of months worth.
Yeah.
You know, I wonder how much, and this is something actually I want to talk to you about, is how much of that, so our world has kind of gone the way of that the biblical idea of manhood is a very derogatory thing in society today outside of God or a Christian worldview, right? How much of that do you see, that worldview, do you see impacting the business and work life?
It makes... so there are also lots of men, there are men who have a certain understanding of what it means to be a man that don't have a biblical worldview.
Yes.
And they're more likely to thrive.
Yes.
Just because they take ownership for their spouses, for their children, and they're not depending on somebody else, right? They're not depending on the government, or you know, they have to forge a way. It's good for men to forge something, and that's a whole different discussion.
Yes.
But it's that's part of our purpose. Is I'm doing it to protect my wife. I'm doing it to protect my children. I'm doing it to keep them warm. Yeah. It's not even about me, actually. And so, but there are a lot of men and women who are doing it for themselves, and that's a natural position of our hearts. I get it.
So would you say that that worldview has more influence in the workforce today? And I say workforce, I don't really mean workforce in, maybe let's talk about workforce. Would you say is it a noticeable difference?
I think in southern Alberta it's pretty conservative.
Yes.
So, but I would say in other areas,
it's a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's we tend, in our society as a whole, we tend less and less to look after each other than we used to.
Yeah.
We've become way more individualistic. There's a lot of heartache out there. There's a lot of, it's a broken world.
Yeah.
So, but where people understand their responsibility and that they got to, I don't want to say pull up your bootstraps because it's not something you can always do. Learn to actually be okay needing help sometimes, and that bit of a humble position, like you know what, I'm stuck.
Yeah.
Can you do something? Or,
yeah. What do I do? Or give
and
me
then
some
and
advice.
then there's lots of us that should have a hard position. Says, well, sure. I mean, what do you need?
Yeah.
Or maybe I don't have what you need, but you know that it's we're all on our devices. We're all isolated. Mm-hmm. We have large cities and everybody's lonely.
Yeah.
We have big churches and they don't know each other. We have towns, and you know what I'm saying? It's
have no idea who our neighbors are anymore.
You don't need piles of people. You need to have 100 friends. To be 100 miles wide and a half inch deep in your relationships is also draining. Yeah. You only need a couple of relationships that are deep. You know.
Yeah. But I think
stability.
Yeah, I think that is stability. That's for sure. So in the business side of it, then, would you say that I guess the question is this: how much focus and how much emphasis do you put in your business on your employees getting to know one another? Is that something that you and Jared think about and talk through?
No.
Or is that just...
We just expect them to do that.
Okay.
That's what I would do, I guess.
Yeah.
And so that's not necessarily smart on my part. But I always say, it's two-man teams.
Yeah.
And so you're in the work truck together, you're on the job together. I think you just would get to know each other.
Yeah, you'll get to know each other.
But we didn't have smartphones when I was apprenticing. So
you don't
sometimes,
actually know right now, right?
Well, sometimes I'll walk in on and then I'll see the guys on their phone. I'm like, serious guys, really? Like,
yeah.
But you can't change it.
Yeah.
It's out of my hands.
And it's almost like you can't create a fake environment either, right? Like you see a lot of like corporate, like family companies, family.
Yeah.
And they basically like force events together, and it just never, it's just that half inch that you were talking
just for
about,
the photo
right?
shoot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The pizza party.
Yeah. And so there are definitely strong relationships. Sometimes the relationships come through selfishnesses because somebody calls somebody out, or learning curves, right? We have some older men, and I appreciate that. And the younger guys are learning. They do. We can tell. We can see it. They're growing. Some of what I thought as being business owner, we organize the work, we facilitate it, whatever you want to call it. We take responsibility for making sure you have things to do because that's what we said we would do. But then you also got to be responsible to make sure you don't antagonize the customers that they do call us back, so that everybody has their responsibility. But the thread there for a sec, sorry. So learning to take over that the relationships and stuff.
Yeah, we were talking about relationships within the workforce.
Yes, it grows. It comes. It does.
But it has to come naturally.
Yeah, and
that's
some people
do you force it at events, or do you?
No, we have some events, but it's because it's just good to do one. So it's not to get something.
Yeah.
And the guys who sit together for work after beer, and the ones who don't. Some just don't like beer. Some just want to go home. I used to stay at the shop lots because I would glean from the guys that were older than me. But I just want to go home now.
Yeah.
But I do stay once in a while after work for a bit. Not often. I should do it more, but.
But also, you have people in leadership position now that do what you did at the beginning.
They do, yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So
there's a flow. If you get some dissension among the ranks, so then that stops pretty quick. There's always something moving.
Yeah,
there's always something going on.
Well, with that many people and that many relationships,
yeah. So you try to sometimes put the right teams together for the sake of the job because you need to get it done. Sometimes you put certain teams together because you just think they'll appreciate each other's company. It's nice to have that sometimes at work. Sometimes you put an older and a younger together because...
Need to learn something.
Yeah. And then a lot of it you just can't control. You're just hopeful that you can just put somebody everywhere.
A certain level of risk you just have to take.
It is.
Yeah. But
so if you would have said, if I would have known now, if I would have known then what I know now, I never would have done it.
Why do you say that?
Because there's some serious heartaches that come in that you come through, and you can't walk away, and you just have to walk through it.
Yeah.
And I think what I didn't realize is that actually happens to a lot of people. I thought it was just happening to me, but it happens to lots of people.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't happen to you through your work or your business, it might happen to you through your family.
Yeah. Well, and the idea that you're going to walk through life unscathed is just not. It's not reality.
No, but it's something that we can't conceive when we're at the beginning of it. You only go through it and then you know.
But aren't you glad you didn't know?
Oh, I'm 100% glad I didn't know. But at the same time, I'm like, 2 years after we took over, I said to my partner, I said, man, what did we get ourselves into?
That was 2 years?
2 years after we took over. And I guess later on I found that's quite typical. People run stuck.
Yeah.
But that's when I had to learn to just... got to go through.
Yeah. Would you encourage your sons to start what you did?
So that's the part that's a nasty question.
It's a fair question.
It is. It's a good question because it's for me. It's a struggle. I would and I wouldn't. You can't prepare them for it, but I can walk with them.
Yeah.
So I guess in a certain sense I would, but I would not make it look like a rosy thing at all. Well, they've seen it. They'll say, I don't know if I want to do what you've done, Dad. And I said, you know what? Don't worry about it. I never worked towards that. That wasn't my goal.
Yeah, it just happened.
These are the doors that opened, and you walk through them, and they close behind you. You can't go back.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I have said to a lot of people when they say, "Hey, should I start a business? What piece of advice can you give me? What's one thing?" And I've got 5 minutes. I say the third year is going to be the hardest. Just live with that.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Just be ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I had somebody who's been in business now for about 12 years who asked me that before he got started. I asked him that about a year ago. I said, so you're fairly successful, and him and his partner are. They're doing well. And for the most part, I believe they're doing a really good job as far as I know with their business. And I said, so what can you attribute to your success? He said, well, what you said. And I couldn't remember we had the conversation. Yeah. And I said, what did I say? Like, when did I say it? And he goes, well, remember we were standing at so-and-so, at so-and-so's house. We had this conversation. I said, I remember being there. Yeah, what did I say? And he goes, you said the third year would be the hardest. Okay. And it saved us. Oh. I said, how did it save you? Tell me how it saved you. And he said, we saved every penny we could. Yeah. Because, Jake said the third year would be the hardest. And it came, and we had money to pay our bills, he said. That made everything easier. Yeah. It was still hard, but it made everything easier. And so that's what I tell people now. I'm like, that person over there said the third year is the hardest because I had said so maybe it's true. But I found that to be true.
But that's true. If you have money problems, your other problems are compounded.
That's correct.
If your money is in order, that usually comes because it's not your main focus, then you have room to deal with the other things as they come, because you're not worried, because your money would be the most important thing if it's not under control.
Yeah.
You need it to pay your, everything. That's the currency, right? But if you don't have enough of that because maybe some things couldn't have been controlled, but generally speaking, especially in contracting, every moment is an opportunity to make $1. And if you're wise about it, there should be no need to. So.
Yeah, but then there's so many, like you said, there's so many unforeseen things.
You can't control people that don't pay.
Yeah.
Or unforeseen. So there's no guarantees. That's the other side of it.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it is interesting. But I have learned though that the world is a lot smaller than you think.
Also,
right? Like especially when I first got into business, somebody actually, this is a piece of advice somebody gave to me when we first moved here. Said you're not from here. But Southern Alberta is a very small place. If I can give you a piece of advice, it's that. And I went, what does he mean by that? And I didn't neglect it, but I couldn't figure out what he meant until maybe 3 or 4 years later. All of a sudden it was like, in the business community, people know and hear of each other fairly quickly, right?
Good and the bad. Yeah,
the good and the bad. And so if you have a customer that doesn't pay, as an example, people know about that, right? So from the customer side, there is that accountability as well, right? Yeah. But then there's some people who have they don't care, right? And that's where I find business owners, small business owners especially, get into trouble if they run across people like that.
Yeah, you do, and it's just there's going to be some hard times. It's. We know that we like working for farmers. We understand that now. That we didn't always sometimes think, we better find some work. So you start drumming it up here and there, and then they never hire you back. It's always about the bottom dollar, and fair enough. I get that. Yeah. But it's just not the same.
Yeah.
But not it takes time. It takes years to figure that out sometimes.
Yeah.
And you might know who you want to work for, and they might not need you at that time. So then what? So it's. Yeah, it's going to put some grit. You're going to build some grit.
Yeah, and you're going to have some stones in your shoes.
Yeah, some pebbles.
Yeah, for sure. What would be one piece of advice? We're probably pretty close to wrapping it up, eh?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah,
right, like an hour and a half or so.
Okay, what's one piece of advice? If I said, give me 2 or 3 minutes of your time. I'm looking at starting a business. I'm 25 years old. Or maybe I should ask it this way: buying a business or building a business. What would you do again?
Both are good.
Both are good.
I don't think there's a silver bullet for anything.
Okay.
And I've never. I don't have the thought process of starting a business or not starting a business, or everybody has opportunities. If you're whatever you're gonna do. Whether you're going to buy a business or take over a business or work for somebody, which is not at all negative or low.
No, I think it's a noble way to live a life.
Whatever you're going to do, give more than you take.
Yeah.
To me, that's just in your family. If you don't do that with your spouse, it's on the rocks. With your siblings and your parents, if you don't do that, it's on the rocks. With your colleagues, if you don't do that, it's on the rocks.
Yeah. With
your suppliers, everybody just and appreciate any opportunity you receive. And then the rest, that's life experience. You have to be wise with everything you get.
So, okay, so let's ask a different question then. So you're 35 years old and you've run a business for, say, 5 or 6 years. At what point should somebody consider giving up business and going back to being an employee?
Sometimes people find out that they're not cut out for it. That's not what they like. They will say I wasn't cut out for this, but what they find out is I'm sick and tired of billing at night. I'm sick and tired. I get no family time, and I have my priorities straight, but I can't even get them straight. Yeah. So I know people that have done that, and they're much happier. I don't know.
But do you think that that's something that somebody should actively be thinking
about? No, because you asked me earlier too, what else would you do? I have other things I would do, but I'm not going to set my heart on them.
Yeah, gotcha.
Because Rivers Electric came about without me setting my heart on anything, and then God put it on my path.
Yeah.
And He's taught me so much through those things. So I'll never say I shouldn't have done it. And it wasn't part of my plans. I just honestly, Yeah, there's opportunities, and I think there's nothing wrong with taking opportunities. So if you see something, but make sure you, like you said earlier, that you know who you're getting involved with, that you know what the cost is going to be, and that you, with your spouse especially, that you understand together what the cost is going to be.
Yeah, I think that is missed.
Yeah.
Certainly, I never thought about that originally.
No, I didn't either.
To be honest, I never considered what. Oh, she's
there were no
so
podcasts when we started out either to listen to.
Nobody was teaching me. It was all. It was all get out there and get experience.
So when we took over, the fellow who started River said to us, "Don't just work." So that's what I did, and I said, "No, you do." Like when as long as I worked for him, I thought he had a pretty nice life. He was home as much as he was at work all day too, which I think that's proper. This is a ship that we're on, so you got to keep sailing it. If an opportunity comes up, by all means, don't be shy, and find somebody that you can connect with to talk about it once in a while.
Yeah,
I had that with my partner.
Yeah,
by myself, I never could have done it. Would have done it.
Okay.
But I had somebody I could trust, and somebody who trusted me, and we could talk about anything and everything.
Gotcha.
And we kept our lives totally separate. That's a different discussion in partnership, and we still do.
Yeah.
But
interesting.
We have never done anything together yet.
Wow.
We're super weird.
That's very interesting, actually.
I don't know who his friends are. He doesn't know who mine are. We know, but we don't. So we share our hearts with each other. Mm-hmm. But we don't. I've never been to his birthday parties or his wife's or nothing. Not a clue.
I see. That's very interesting. I think it's very, very intriguing.
Yeah. When we need each other, we'll find each other, 100%. And our wives get along just fine.
Yeah.
There's no issues. We have a lot of common ground in many ways. But we've always, maybe because we're 10, 12 years apart, or maybe because we both understood we just like our space and we don't want anybody invading it.
Yeah.
I guard my space strongly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay,
that's all. That's actually very, very.
So maybe that's one thing too for somebody who's going into business or something. Right? Do I forget about friendships and all? Just stay close to your wife, your spouse. I mean, it could be a woman starting a business. Right? Stay close to your husband.
And then your business partner. Would you say that's and we've gone on for quite a while here, but I want to touch on that just a little bit. Would you say that is important that you keep your social lives separate? Would you attribute some of that?
I would say it's very important.
Yeah.
Yeah. To my success, our success, I don't know. I just can't imagine doing it any other way.
Yeah, and then we got to go back and define success, and that's
but even if you're,
would you say that has helped business? I guess
it's helped us to stay on track.
Yeah,
and it's prevented us from going down rabbit holes that didn't.
Why is that? Like, is that almost because there's nothing that can conflict in your personal life that would then carry over to business?
That's, I think, a large part of it. I think you see that clearly. Yeah. There is no conflict between us.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank the Lord for that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. If there's any conflict, it's something within Rivers, something that we need to talk to each other about. Yeah. And it's not conflict; it's just we're two totally different people.
Yeah.
And if we don't catch up enough for a while, if we haven't seen each other for a week very much, or we sit side by side, but if we haven't connected, you can have that in a marriage too. Mm-hmm. Yep. But then you just feel okay. We better
reconnect. Yeah.
Just drop in the chair in his office or him in mine and just so. But at the end of the day, we go home and we don't think about each other.
Well,
that's been like that since day one.
Yeah, that's cool. So. Now, anything else we want to cover, or where do you think we're at?
Maybe one last question.
Sure, go for it.
So you've given a lot of advice and everything, which is awesome. Now, if you could change anything, just one thing, what would that be?
I honestly wouldn't have it any other way. To be honest, I wouldn't. I don't know why that is. Like 10 years ago, I could have maybe said some things I would have done differently, but not now anymore.
It all panned out in the end?
Well, yeah, but that sounds so... Is it panning out? Did it pan out? What's it panning out for? I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
The objective, right? I understand your dilemma, yeah.
And I'm just thankful for where we're at. I'm thankful for what we have. I'm thankful for what we've been given. So, yeah, I honestly couldn't. I appreciate the question. It's good to look inward sometimes. But like I said, I had the moment 2 years after we took over that I thought, what on earth did I get myself into? Mm-hmm. But now you're in it and you can't walk away. and now it's a gift.
Yeah, no,
Like it's just so.
that's a perfect answer.
I have no regrets in that sense.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Sure, I would have liked to spend more time with my wife, or more time with my children, or more time with some friends, or whatever. But
But if you were in a different business venture, you would be saying the same thing.
I think that doesn't change.
Yeah.
Alrighty, well, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah,
I
thanks
appreciate
so much
chatting
for your
with you
time.
guys.
I appreciate it for
And
sure.
I've learned from you too. It's good to
well-
get to share the fat, chew the fat.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's awesome.
So, and well, you're still always checking each other. So,
Yeah.
God bless you guys.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Thank you.